I want you to meet someone very special. This is your brother, Dillon.
Hello and welcome to the Animated 100 List, a series here on Modern Mouse where we're looking at different animated films throughout the span of animation's history and from around the world to try and find the greatest films in animation history and hopefully, like we did in the very beginning, find something better than Chicken Little. Today we're looking at 1998's film The Rugrats Movie. The Rugrats Movie was a suggestion given to me from Joey Baseball. You can see the comment here, and also, if you're interested in hearing about a movie that you think we should put on the list, leave a comment down below. I'm going to be picking movies from here on out, either from guests that come on or from the comments down below. The Rugrats Movie is about the Pickles family, namely Tommy, the lead protagonist of the Rugrats TV show from the 1990s, and all of his friends, including Chuckie, Phil, Lil, and his cousin Angelica. As the Pickles family is growing, adding baby Dillon to the list, we see how Tommy interacts with his new baby brother, and we see his family and how they also interact with this new dynamic to the family. The toddlers of the show end up on a wild adventure and by the end are finally reunited with their family. And listen, I did not think this film was going to be as fun as it was and as strangely relatable as I thought it would be. I remember watching Rugrats as a kid growing up in the 1990s. I remember when it first premiered and watched it seemingly up till probably this movie came out, although I do know that Rugrats lasted further and they did Rugrats All Grown Up and they did have a few other films. But this seemed like a great culmination of what the original Rugrats show was. But of course, as a kid, I paid more attention to the kids. I paid more attention to the toddlers and what they were doing, and I didn't care nearly as much about the parents and Tommy's grandfather and what everybody was doing commingling and how they all got along. But this film focuses on both the kids as well as the parents, and I just want to say right up front that I could not relate more to Stu Pickles. I mean, I don't have any children myself, but man, that guy is struggling and trying to prove himself just to be able to say that he's a great dad and a great husband. And honestly, what a good dude.
You barely make ends meet now. You've got no insurance, no savings, and another kid on the way. For your information, bro, I am working on something right now that is going to put this branch of the Pickles family on easy street.
Like I said before, this movie came out in 1998. It's about an hour and 20 minutes long. It's rated G, so pretty much anybody can sit down and watch it. And like when we're rating all of the other films, we're going to go with 5 different categories: animation, story, character, sound and music, and the historical and cultural context of this film. I will rate everything a 0 through 10, so basically a movie can have up to 50 points or as low as 0 points. And this film was very surprising to me. The animation in and of itself stood out. Obviously with a TV show they have a lot less time to animate episode to episode, so there isn't all of the shadowing or all of the different textures or nuances to the animation as there can be in a film, and this film in particular really shows that. There's some great shadowing, there's some great texture work. There's also these moments in the later scenes in the forest as well as just generally the outside view. The clouds and the sky seem to have this realistic approach. I'm not 100% sure if they actually used real photos of the sky or not, but it just stood out as something really interesting and dynamic, as the foreground was much more cartoonish than the background skies that you see throughout the film. Also, just like the show, there was a lot of great camera work here. The camera swinging around, feeling like you're a toddler on screen with these characters, and also seeing the world from their point of view for the most part. You're seeing the world from a 1 foot tall height rather than seeing it from an adult size view. Unless you're hanging out with the adults, of course. Everything here just seemed to work, whether you were in Tommy Pickles' house or you were out in the forest. There was just so much texture and nuance to the animation, the backgrounds, the camera work, the shadowing, the coloring. It was just an upgrade all around from the show, and it does kind of stand on par with a lot of the great Disney work of the late 1990s. For the animation portion of this ranking, I'm giving it an 8.25. And moving on to story, I had a lot of fun with this story, and I loved how much the adults and the kids shared as far as screen time. It felt like not exactly a 50-50 split, but there was a good majority of this film that was with the parents that I didn't expect. This is also a really emotional film about expanding families and about kids getting younger siblings and how to deal with that. If I was a kid or I was a parent, I would definitely want to watch this movie to kind of experience that and feel those emotions and see what's going to happen to me or what's going to happen to my children as we expand the family. It was a really sweet and beautiful emotional story in that sense. The writing for the Rugrats movie is also pretty good. Not everything hits, but the majority of the jokes made me actually laugh.
Can't believe you left them with your father. The man slept through Pearl Harbor, for heaven's sake.
And there are a lot of moments, because a lot of the film involves babies, where there's poop and pee and throw up and things like that. In movies that we see in current times where there's a fart joke or something like that, I always have to roll my eyes because it just seems like such a cheap joke. But the way that it's used here in the Rugrats movie, like when Tommy and the other babies end up in the newborn baby section of the hospital and they're all peeing and it's like this fountain of pee. It's weird to say that out loud, but it doesn't come off as crude or grotesque, or it doesn't come off as this ha ha ha, look at that baby peeing. It's what babies do. It's just who they are, and you kind of have to deal with it and you have to grow into it. And even in the film, as we see young Dillon have to be taken care of by his older brother Tommy, you see Tommy have to tend to him in those kinds of ways where he recognizes that Dillon does have to use the restroom or Dillon is sick, and that is just a part of life. So those kind of poopy pee jokes weren't used as embarrassing humor. It was used more as an endearing part of the human experience. I will say that as far as this film goes, it's best to have seen the show previously, and in trying to talk about just this film, it's hard for me to take the context of the show away from it. Because of that, I feel like I have to dock it slightly. It is really a story about Tommy more than anything else, but the third act of the film really begins to focus mostly on the kids, despite the fact that a majority of the film split the time between the kids and the parents. I would have loved to have seen more of the parents towards the ending of the film, but that's just me. I ended up giving the story a 7 out of 10. And in context with that, I have to talk about the characters and how much they all feel like they get proper screen time. Chuckie gets a lot of moments. Phil and Lil get a lot of moments. Angelica gets a lot of moments. And we see all of the different parents being able to express themselves and get across what their personalities are. One of the great things about this story as well is not only seeing Tommy and his growth, but so many of the other characters' growth throughout the film as young Dillon comes into the picture. Like I said previously, a lot of this film feels really relatable. I know that so many movies come out these days and they're about people who live far beyond the means that a majority of the audience will ever get to, but the Pickles family really feels like a family I would live in, whether I'm a parent or one of the kids. And I understand that my older brother, if I was to be Stu, my older brother is doing better than me, and Angelica's a bit more bratty and harder to deal with. And there's just so many things in this that it's like, I've lived this, I understand these characters, and I just want to watch them because I see a lot of who I am in them. On the other side of that, while we watch these characters grow and learn, I feel like I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for Tommy to understand his new role in life. I'm rooting for Tommy's parents to handle everything and get a grip on their world and finally feel like there's a place for them. You know, they're not just struggling trying to get by. Also, the original cast here sounds better than ever, and all of the guest stars that come on board for this sound fantastic, and they find really great roles that don't necessarily take away from the main cast, which I think sometimes can be an issue when you talk about guest stars coming in. I ended up giving the characters an 8 out of 10 here. As far as sound and music, like I said before, I think that the voice acting here is fantastic, And the songs at the beginning of this film also really resonate well. They're either fun or emotional, and they connect and move along the story. There's, like I said before, the firstborn room at the hospital and how they're all peeing. There's a song there. It's a lot of fun. It's fantastic. And it makes you understand what being a newborn is like in this story. The problem that I have is that in the second half of this film, there doesn't seem to be as many songs or as many emotional song moments to keep the story being pushed forward. It just seems like the first half features a lot of musical numbers, and then they just forgot to add more in this back half of the film. On top of that, the score seems a bit jarring because it blends this kind of 90s rock and hip hop, and it goes with this classic film score that feels more like 40s and 50s kind of film score, and they more or less just clash. They don't ever really feel like they gel together. I will say though that the sound design and Foley work for this film does actually do quite a bit because it blends a bit of cartoonishness with some real world sounds, which helps that real sky background with the upfront cartoonishness kind of feel normal, and I really liked that about this film. I ended up giving the sound and music portion a 5.5. And as far as the historical and cultural relevance of this film, I do think that if I was going to show anyone any kind of Rugrats media, if they were unfamiliar with the Rugrats, I would show them this. This feels like the grand finale of the original series. It's emotional, it's powerful, it's funny, and it's kind of the best of what Rugrats was. The unfortunate part of it is that I don't think that most people, when they think of the Rugrats, think of this film. They more or less think of the original show more than they do any of the other subsequent media, whether it's films or video games or anything else that came out from the Rugrats. So it doesn't feel as historical or culturally relevant. It is good, and I would definitely show this to someone, but I don't think that most people are going to turn to this and say, yeah, that's the definitive Rugrats piece of media. I think that people are going to just only turn to the show, and because of that, I couldn't rate this very high. I had to give it a 2 out of 10. That means that the Rugrats movie ends up with a score of 30.75 out of a possible 50, which isn't bad, and thank goodness now. It's better than Chicken Little, and it tops the current list of the animated 100. So that's the third film on our list, and I'm so excited to continue this series, and I'll be back in 2 weeks to add the fourth film to the list, which is Felidae, a 1994 German film, but I do have the English dub. I'm going to leave that in the comments below if you want to watch it. I will just mention that it is not G-rated. It's a film about cats and a film noir murder mystery within that world, but there is a lot of language, a lot of sex, a lot of crudeness to it. So I wouldn't watch this one with little kids around. I'm excited to talk about that one though, because it's a great juxtaposition to this film, and it's going to be a lot different than anything else that we've put on the list so far. And if you have something that you think should be put on the list, leave a comment down below with one of your movies that you would love to see. Please just leave like one, because if I get a giant list from everybody, it gets hard to decipher what I should go through. So leave one recommendation per video here. If I didn't get to it, leave it on the next one. Keep leaving it. I do see multiple comments, and I'm trying to get to different ones as I go, especially ones that are commented multiple times. And in the meantime, thank you for watching. Please join the Discord if you've not. We continue the conversation over there about the animated 100 videos, as well as all the other videos here at Modern Mouse. And leave your comments down below on what you thought of the Rugrats movie if you watched this one. If not, go watch the Rugrats movie, come back, leave your comments down below. I want to continue the conversation about all of these films. And if you haven't watched the rest of the series, you can watch the whole playlist. I think it ends up at the end screen here. And until next time, for Felidae, well, I hope that we continue to find things better than Chicken Little.